Opinions expressed on this radio program do not necessarily reflect the views of this radio station.
Todd, I'll love it. Todd, I'll love it.
Todd and Craig, good to hear you guys.
Todd, I'll love it.
This is Attorney Todd L. Levitt.
Honestly, you could not be any more spot on.
Now, from the Black Diamond Group mothership in the studios of 98.5 UPS, the Todd L. Levitt Law Show.
Welcome to the Todd L. Levitt Law Show. Good morning, good evening, and good night. I'm yours truly, Attorney Todd L. Levitt, broadcasting and podcasting, and now on YouTube. Not only solo, but hopefully with my good friend Craig Russell, the muscle, the hustle, America's favorite nug. Don't call me Mando. The water is wet. The sky is blue. He does a great Little John impression. Hey! And Craig Russell, we love you, Little John. Craig Russell, the muscle, the hustle, America's favorite nug. We love you, Craig. How you doing, Craig?
I am fan-flippin-tastic, Todd. How are you?
I could not be better. I'm smoking it. I'm toking it. We're here in the Black Diamond Group mothership in the middle of the mitten in a beautiful green nutrient field. This show is new. We took the summer off. We've come back so strong, Craig. And we have a huge show this evening, this morning, or afternoon. It depends on wherever you're listening to the show. But I'm pretty stoked about the YouTube channel that we're currently running.
Yes, we're, and I would be on some of these YouTube videos if you decided not to do them at like 1 p.m, because that's, some of us have jobs and stuff. I know you don't, but that's okay. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Exactly. No, we're definitely going to have more of Craig Russell and his handsome mug on the Todd L. Levitt YouTube channel. So just go to Todd L. Levitt, Levitt on YouTube. Please subscribe. Check out all the handful of videos. And Craig, we're trying to get you on more and more. We're going to have, I spoke to Judge Dan Bain. He's coming on that show as well. So we got a lot of guests on this show today. Huge show. Attorney Mike Nichols is coming on, Craig,
who was on one of the YouTube videos with you like last week, and now he's going to be on the radio show and on the podcast.
We were talking about reefer madness.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and he's got other stuff he wants to talk about, I'm sure. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, how about opening the show with one of my all-time favorite top 5 groups from the 80s there, Craig?
Red Skies at Night, The Fix.
The Fix.
Cy Cyrus, the lead singer of The Fix.
That riff has such a great tunage in my noggin. I can't take it, and it's amazing.
The Fix was a pretty underrated 80s new wave band. I liked a lot of stuff that they did. And the fact that their lead singer's name is basically the same thing twice. Cy Cyrus.
Yeah, 2 first names.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I had a couple friends like that.
Did you?
Yeah.
I know.
Speaking of Pink Guava,
Yeah.
one of my friends, Pink Guava, strain of the week.
That's one of your friends?
Yeah, one of my friends.
One of your friends?
Brought to you by M66 Cannabis Company, soon to be opening up in Barreton, Michigan on M66, folks.
Sweet.
And G Money is not here this evening, but Jake was here. And I said, Jake, what? Give me a strain of the week. He goes, well, Jenna's really enjoying Pink Guava lately. I said, Pink Guava? I just want to say Pink Guava, Craig.
It is kind of fun to say.
Yeah.
Not the pink part, but the guava part.
But the guava part, right. But, Craig, I have a question for you.
I have an answer for you.
Well, one, we have a lot of law to get to today, folks.
Yes.
So just stay tuned. We're just waiting for Mike the Nick Nichols to chime in, and we're going to really talk about, well, we have a number of legal topics that I'm pretty stoked about.
Sure.
But my question for you is, what song did you really want to play? I wanted to play The Fix by The Fix, Red Skies at Night. And what did you want to play?
Well, that group last week, what was it? Horizon Theory?
Horizon Theory.
Yeah,
Chris Grandy. Chris Grandy, dear friend of mine. Big shout out to Chris and the Maury family.
I was starting to explore some of the stuff they got on YouTube and found this song called December that I really was into. And so I want to play that.
All right. Turn it and burn it and spin it on the dial, Craig.
What are you, a 1950s disc jockey?
Yeah.
Steals a wheel and the mounds of sound and the
That's right. We'll take the 10th caller. Hey, tell the listeners the truth. You've been in radio for 120 years.
At least.
Well, there was really not a 10th caller. Wasn't it just, okay, it's time to pick up the phone. Hey, you're the 10th caller.
Nope, you have to have a 10th caller. You got to go through and do it legit. I worked with a guy who didn't do that, and he got fired because he got found out.
Really?
Because the same person called back 3 times in a row, and he told him each time they were calling number 9 instead of calling number 2.
But here's the problem, Craig. You and I, well, at least I grew up because I'm 58 in the 70s. Graduated high school, class 83, 1983, Berkeley High. Big shout out to Matt Nevison. I love you, Matt Nevy. And they call him Nevy. We played football together. He listens to the show. But the problem was back in the day, growing up, and you were listening to, all the stations out of Metro Detroit, Arthur Penhollow.
Yeah. The Riff and WHYT.
The wheels
and all that.
The problem was we didn't have push button phones. We had the dial phones.
Really?
And do you recall how impossible it was?
Oh, yeah.
To try to dial 9 digits and and try to be the 9th or 10th caller? It was impossible.
But the people with the touchtone phones or the ones that had the fancy redial on it, then it was all over.
Well, who had redial? It was a dial phone. I'm talking before push-button phones.
I know, but, push-button phones came into the 80s. That's when everybody started to get one.
Weren't they in the late 70s?
Probably. I mean, I just know that once you got the push-button phone, you had the little button on that said redial, and that just made it completely easy. So.
Yeah. And here's the other thing, Craig. I want to get right to it.
Get to it.
Because, here's what I love and appreciate about you, and I want all the listeners to know this about you.
Okay.
You're one of my closest friends.
And you're one of mine.
Yeah. And when you call me on the phone, and we often speak throughout the week.
Sure.
You're so honest, and you're the truth, and you can't fake the truth. You will say, Todd, do you have 15 minutes? And if I do, I'll say, Craig, I do have 15 minutes. As opposed to someone calling you and saying, hey, do you have a minute? Because it's never a minute. If somebody says, hey, Craig, hey, Todd, do you have a minute? Hey, Mike Nichols, do you have a minute? No, it's never a minute. Like, just be truthful with me. And you are truthful. You'll say, hey, Todd, you got 15, 20 minutes. Because, frankly, when you say, do you have a minute, I don't know any person out there, by the time you say, hello, hey, how you doing? You're already on 2-3 minutes of a conversation. So just be truthful with one another and say how much time you need with that person. And you're the only person in my life that does that. So major props to you.
Can I be truthful with you?
Well, can you raise your right hand? We are a law show, by the way.
Raising my right hand.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
So help me God.
All right. What you got to say?
I'm going to tell you. You're the only person. You're the only person I'm truthful with about that. Everyone else, I say, hey, do you got a minute? And I really want 10. You're the only one I actually say, hey, you got 15 minutes? Because then I'll spend 15 minutes.
You know what else drives me crazy?
What else drives you crazy?
I have a truck, big Chevy.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if you have a truck, a car, a minivan, and often if you operate a motor vehicle on a public roadway, as often I do, going from county to county, court to court, the odds are there's going to be stuff on the passenger seat.
Sure.
From briefcase to bike shorts, shoes, because I shred the gnar.
Food wrapper.
Whatever it is.
Yep.
Then comes the time where somebody is going to get in the front seat, and you hop in the driver's seat and you say, hey, can you wait a minute so I can put the stuff in the back seat?
Sure. But
more often than not, that person is not waiting. They open the door, they're halfway in, and they don't wait for you to put the stuff into the back seat to clear it out for them. There's stuff on the floor. You got to move your boots. You got hunting gear. October 1st is coming up. I mean, just to all my friends out there, which are, there's only few and far in between who actually, hop in the front seat of my vehicle other than the lovely Jen. Can you give me a minute to clear it out when I say, come on in, but give me a minute, Craig? That's all I'm asking you. Give me a minute.
Do you realize something?
What's that?
Have you ever heard of the term called unconscious plagiarism?
Well, I mean, I know what plagiarism is. It's when you are, so what is that?
Unconscious plagiarism. In other words, do you remember the song My Sweet Lord by George Harrison?
I don't like that song. Okay, I like the Beatles, but I don't like that song, and now it's going to be going off of my noggin all day, Craig.
Oh, Lord. Well, anyway.
Going to have to replace it with Britney Spears' Ooh, Baby, Baby.
I don't know anything about that.
All right, so go ahead. What about, George? What about that term you gave me?
He was sued for unconscious plagiarism because the basic theme of that song is He's So Fine by the Chiffons from the 1960s.
Who won?
Fine. Well, he was found guilty, but he didn't have to pay like any real big restitution because they found it was unconscious plagiarism. He didn't actively try and copy their song. It just kind of happened. And you can figure that's going to happen from time to time. Do you realize that story about you and people clearing off your front seat of your car? That was an episode of Seinfeld. That's unconscious plagiarism. You didn't
Craig,
know that.
I'm not alone, though, in that theory. Has that never happened to you?
Oh, it happened to me all the time.
Okay, so, there you go.
But telling that story that way, I'm like, hey, that's an episode of Seinfeld. I can totally remember it. That's Jerry saying, wait a minute, Elaine, hold on. I got to clean up my front of my car. And it's like, you didn't know that, but that's unconscious plagiarism right there.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
And I'm down?
Craig Russell, the muscle, the hustle. I am out of here, dropping the mic. You're very feng shui, and again, appearing at Walmarts across the country. We are a law show, Craig, the Todd and Levitt Law Show with my handsome co-host Craig Russell. And Mike Nichols, attorney at law, is going to be coming on the show. The Nichols Law Firm, East Lansing, Michigan, with Wendy Nichols, attorney at law. We are now on YouTube, so please, if you're listening to the show and you enjoy it and you want to see some of us on video, some topics are similar, some are different. Yep. Please subscribe and repost. We appreciate that. Big shout out, by the way, to my buddy Harold, my friend Harold and his son in Barreton, the village of Barreton, at Huff's Towing and Auto Mechanic Garage. Great guy. Harold has done so much for that village and the community, and his son does such a great job. So I just want to make sure I gave him a big shout out. And all our sponsors, Chad Malley, Well Drilling, does such a great job, Craig.
Oh, yeah. All of them. They all do fantastic. Yep. Including Todd L. Levitt. You're a sponsor of the show, too.
Yep.
So.
Rusty Golds and Everett, my dear friend Rusty Golds. We're definitely going antiquing here this week. So if any of you out there enjoy antiquing, make sure you make it over to Everett, Michigan, right there off of M10.
It still cracks me up when you talk about antiquing.
Well,
I hear you. I talk about antiquing.
You know how many cool things you could find at Rusty Gold's?
Oh, yeah.
There's different. When you go to an antique store, can you believe I'm talking about antiques?
I know.
Especially his shop, his store. It's amazing because there's different sections from different individuals who have their own collections that are on display. So it doesn't matter what type of genre or what your hobbies are, or present, current, past. You could go to his shop in Everett, Rusty Gold's, and find it there.
Pretty remarkable. Lots of treasures, lots of stuff. But
we also have, who else is our sponsors? Chad Malley, Rusty Gold's. Who else we got?
Yeah, all right. Clearview Siding and Windows. So we know them. I know they've been a sponsor in the past if they aren't one right now.
Yeah, Clearview Siding and Windows, great people. And IT for Small by Simplicity Forest. My good friend Matt Roberge in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. If you have any IT problems with computers, hardware, make sure you give my good friend Matthew Roberge, great name, the second at IT for Small by Simplicity, and Clark Modular Homes.
Yes, there you go.
Clark off of M20.
That's right.
And we've got other sponsors, but we are a law show, and coming up in the next few segments, we're going to be talking about, you ready for this, Craig?
Yeah.
This is out of a Seinfeld episode.
Oh, okay.
A lady in San Francisco is suing McDonald's over their hot coffee that she spilled on herself.
Not again.
So we're definitely going to be talking about the lawsuit and some of the issues behind that. And Mike has some constitutional law topics to discuss.
All right.
Coming up on the show of all shows, Craig.
And if we're lucky, we'll get to hear Wendy doing some housework in the background.
Every time attorney Mike Nichols comes on, it's just nonstop.
If it isn't the dishwasher running, it's the sink or all that kind of stuff. But so we got to take a break.
Oh, okay. I was going to say hi to my good friend Jeffrey Branch. How about a big shout out to Jeffrey Branch?
Okay, big shout out to Jeffrey Branch. Now
Jeffrey Branch is just certified and bona fide, just a cool guy, and he's a good friend, and he's a great family man, and he listens to the show.
Nice. Well, listen through this break, Jeffrey, and when we come back, Mike the Nick Nichols will be on the Todd L. Levitt Law Show. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Todd L. Levitt Law Show, turning it and burning it into Black Diamond Group Mothership, podcasting and broadcasting, and now on YouTube. Please go to your favorite YouTube platform, a phone, tablet, TV, and type in Todd L. Levitt Law Show and subscribe, and you can see our special guest today, Mr. Mike Nichols, attorney at law. We did a video on Reefer Madness. Craig Russell will be appearing in many more videos, but we appreciate you coming back strong with the Fix Red Skies at Night. And Mike Nichols is in the studio, in his own studio. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, fellas, what's up? I'm so glad you're back, Todd. I'm so glad you're back doing the show. It's a service.
Yeah, Craig and I had to come back, and of course, you are a regular guest and always will be on the show. And describe to the listeners what's going on there, Mike. What's that noise?
That's Wendy doing dishes. But it's so we're taping this on Thursday night. I don't think that's a secret. September 21st, the last full day of summer, and Morgan had volleyball, and so I spent 2 hours at Lansing Catholic Central, and Wendy was coming home from a traumatic brain injury seminar in Novi, and we were trying to figure out, okay, when are we going to eat? We got to get the kid home, and working parents, and that's just the way it is, and so we're doing dishes.
That's what you get. That's what you get. Absolutely.
What you gotta do. Hey, did she win? Did she win?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They lost to Frankenmuth, which is a powerhouse volleyball program.
Okay.
Say hi to Morgan for us, and rest of all the listeners out there who know the Nichols family. Mike, let's get right to it. We're a law show. You're one of the smartest lawyers I know besides your wife, attorney Wendy Nichols. Let's talk about civil infractions and the constitutionality of searching a vehicle, because you know this stuff so well, and the listeners are really interested in these topics. So what you got for us today?
And that's part and parcel of a case that you and I worked on together, and then I think you did a YouTube video about.
I did.
But there's black letter law from the Supreme Court of the United States. It's about 25 years old. It's called Iowa versus Knowles. And when you give somebody an appearance ticket as the officer, that does not give you, as the officer, the right to search the person's car. And the Supreme Court said there's no such thing as search incident to civil infraction. And so this is really important to discuss because, as many people recall, we just put in place a new statute in Michigan, a new law. You can't have your cell phone in your hand. You can't manipulate your cell phone, use your cell phone while you're driving. Just because the officer, even if the officer, it's not likely, but catches you red-handed and you say, yeah, I was using my cell phone while I was driving, that does not mean the officer can search your vehicle. Quite the opposite.
Now,
so if you observe somebody committing a civil infraction, if you're caught using a civil infraction, you don't have to give them permission to search your car, your cell phone, your person. You don't have to do it, and I wouldn't do it.
But on the other hand, if an officer approaches a vehicle that he or she pulled over for a civil infraction, and in plain view, the officer sees what appears to be some sort of criminality afoot, then the officer has a right to extend the traffic stop. Correct, Mr. Nichols?
If the officer sees a gun through the window, a crack pipe, cocaine, yes.
The officer can
Wait a minute.
Oh, go ahead. Hey, Craig's here. How you doing, Craig?
Yeah, Craig's here. How about that? What if you have a license to carry a gun?
See, the officer, you have the obligation as the person with the concealed pistol license. As soon as the officer approaches your vehicle, this is something they teach you in CPL class, you have to tell the officer, I have a CPL and my gun is blank.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, if you don't, it's a misdemeanor in the state of Michigan, by the way.
Yeah.
So, but here's the circumstance. You're referring to civil infraction, a blinker, a speeding ticket, any reason under the motor vehicle code. In most states in the country, Mike, an officer pulls over the vehicle or a motorcycle or any type of a vehicle that operates on a public roadway. Just for a civil infraction, that does not give the officer, without any exception to the warrantless search, a right to search the car.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this. What if the officer stops an individual like Craig Russell? There's nothing going on in plain view. The plain view doctrine does not apply. And the officer says, well, here's a ticket for failing to yield, but can I search your car? So what if the officer extends the stop and there's nothing else taken place at that point. And Craig says, sure, you can search my car. In doing so, the officer finds something illegal. Now Craig's under arrest, and it could be a misdemeanor or felony. Can you suppress that? Because at the end of the traffic stop, we do know that there's a Supreme Court case that the traffic stop, because you and I argued this, cannot be extended beyond the traffic stop, the civil infraction, correct?
Rodriguez. Yes, Rodriguez. And that's a very, very fact-intensive analysis, as we call it in the legal field.
Right. I threw a lot at you there.
But, Rodriguez was that dog sniff case, right, where the cop extended the stop about 15 minutes with absolutely no new facts and said, I just want the dog to come out and circle the car and see if the dog hits on the vehicle. And in that case, the dog did hit on the vehicle. And the concern is, we all have the right to be free from someone from the government intruding on our liberty and our right to go about our business as we choose. And if the officer constrains that without continued and added reasonable articulable suspicion or probable cause, that's a violation of the constitutional right to be free from an unreasonable search.
Talk a little bit about a Terry stop. You just sort of touched on it right there at the end there. Talk to the listeners about a Terry stop. Where does that come into play if someone is stopped for a civil infraction?
And for some odd reason, I have the Terry citation committed to my memory, 362 U.S. 1, 1968.
That's why you're the smartest guy I know, Mr. Nichols.
That's impressive.
It's a seminal United States Supreme Court that we all learn about in law school, probably twice. Once in criminal procedure and once in constitutional law. But the officers, if they can articulate, in other words, explain, here's why I had more than a hunch, why this guy, I didn't like the cut of his jib or her jib, and so I decided to stop them and talk to them and see what was going on. If you can articulate something that supports a reasonable, articulable suspicion that the person is about to engage in criminal activity or is engaging in criminal activity, then you may make a limited stop for the purpose of investigating that particular belief.
So facts. A civil infraction can turn into a Terry stop if the officer is able to apply that standard under Terry, but a hunch does not. A hunch doesn't get it. A hunch does not allow an officer to violate someone's constitutional rights based on a hunch. It has to be the standard of Terry.
And that's why I think drunk driving.
Correct? Am I correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And that's why I think, DUI defense attorneys are such good constitutional scholars, because I've spent, I'm not going to exaggerate. It's easily over 100 hours in continuing legal education, just drilling down on constitutional issues in the Fourth Amendment and Terry. Every case is different, and you have to be able to articulate what is reasonable, articulable suspicion versus, and I had this case. He looked like he was intoxicated. That's what the cop said, and we filed a motion. My client was walking through the parking lot at the Dublin Square pub, which used to be. It's one of those things that's not there anymore in East Lansing. And the cop pulled him over 2 blocks away. And when I got in front of Judge Larkin in 54B District Court, and I questioned him and said, why'd you stop him? And he said, he looked like he was intoxicated. Well, describe that. Give me the reasonable, articulable suspicion. And all he could say was, he just had that look of a drunk. I lost at the district court level, appealed it to circuit court, and Judge Rosemary Aquilina reversed and said, that is the absolute essence of a hunch. When you say somebody just looked intoxicated, but you couldn't say why, you got to at least be able to give me the why.
Right,
so
because
that's what I like to tell people.
Yeah, because look, if an officer says, and we look, I support law enforcement. I have a lot of friends, as you do, in law enforcement, and we appreciate everything you do, as well as our veterans. We love our vets, and we always send much love out to them as well, and those who have served. But my point is that, officer, you indicated in the report that, my client's eyes were glossy. Well, officer, do you know my client? Do you know whether or not he or she worked all day and maybe they worked in a factory and that's why their eyes are red and glossy? I mean, do you know whether or not they were at a casino where people were smoking and that's why their eyes were glossy? Or they have slurred speech? Do you know whether or not they have a speech impediment? I mean, there's so many factors to go after under these circumstances. And to your point, Mike, great case. Congratulations. The judge did the right thing in circuit court. I thought he looked sort of intoxicated. What does that mean? He looked intoxicated. I mean, people look the way they look. And what if he had a disability? I mean, he or she looked intoxicated. I agree that's not enough. Mike, I think we have to go to break. Craig is signaling here, right, Craig?
Yes, we do. We do have to go to
break. Craig, you look intoxicated. Mike, would you agree? Look at Craig. Does he look intoxicated?
I can't see him, but I'm sure he looks intoxicated.
I'm sure I
That's
do,
pink
too.
guava, the strain of the week, everybody. Pink guava. That's why he looks a little, he's extremely happy right now.
I've been working in a factory all morning. That's
exactly.
We got to take a break. We'll be back with Mike Nichols and Todd Levitt, the Todd Levitt Law Show. Welcome back to the Todd L. Levitt Law Show with Todd and me, Craig, and special guest Mike the Nick Nichols. Mr. Nichols is zooming in from beautiful East Lansing. In a little bit, I want to ask his opinion on the whole Mel Tucker thing. But Mike, before we go any farther, you're on the show all the time. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you if they need to get a hold of you. They want to hire your services.
Well, there are many ways, but the law firm's main number is 517-432-9000, 517-432-9000, and my cell number is 517-927-4734, or you can email me at mnichols@nicholslaw.net.
Hey,
I'm not going to give you my address because apparently there's a whole thing in our subdivision because Mel Tucker lives in our addy, so does Tom Izzo, and apparently people have been walking around their houses putting videos out on Facebook and social media and all that, and some neighbors are obsessively enraged about it, and some neighbors are like, who cares?
But Mike, before we get to that, Craig had a question for you. Let's just wrap up the civil infraction. Explain the difference between a civil infraction and a misdemeanor.
Yeah, civil infraction is it's akin to a traffic ticket. So there's no criminal penalty that comes at the end. It can be a speeding ticket, refusing a PBT is a civil infraction, littering is a civil infraction. That's all. And it's a fine, nothing goes on your record. It's a great way to resolve a criminal case. A criminal conviction or a misdemeanor ticket is one where you end up with a conviction on your record that you either have to live with or expunge or whatever.
And then there's a felony, and a felony is something serious.
A felony is, you lose the right to do a lot of things for a while, like vote, serve on a jury.
Exercise your Second Amendment rights.
Exercise. Thank you for pointing that out. I forgot that one. Yes,
I love the Second Amendment.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
But we appreciate you coming on the show. And so we were talking in the last segment regarding civil infractions. We were talking about a Terry stop. How does a civil infraction go beyond just a civil infraction stop if there's criminal activity afoot and an officer has reasonable, articulable suspicion? And does that give the officer the right to search the vehicle with that type of suspicion, or does that just give the officer, just for clarification, a right to extend the stop beyond a civil infraction?
Yeah, so, okay, let's go back to Law School 101. You have to have a search warrant to conduct a search of a car, of a vehicle, of somebody's person. Those are the three basic, areas or zones of privacy. But there are 10 exceptions to the warrant requirement. A search without a warrant is considered to be presumptively unreasonable, so then it's up to the prosecutor, the government, to say this is why it's okay, this is why it's not unreasonable. And when we talk about a search of your vehicle, there are a couple of ways. One is the automobile exception. And so the prosecutor has to show, okay, the officer had probable cause to get in there because there was a crime that the officer observed, and the officer was looking for more evidence of that crime. And that's appropriate because a vehicle can be driven away. It's transportable, it's mobile. I think Carroll versus United States is that case, right?
And it's in the public's best interest that the officer be allowed to then enter the vehicle based on what you just said, because the vehicle is a moving object and evidence can be destroyed.
It's almost like we were sitting next to each other in law school, passing notes back and forth. And
did we do that?
Maybe. I might have remembered that. Maybe not. But the officer, it's a balancing of the right to privacy versus the right to be able to find evidence of a crime before it can be transported away in a motor vehicle. That's the long and short of it.
And of
give
course,
give us another exception
to the warrant requirement. Plain view. We talked about that one, right? If the officer is up at your vehicle and sees with his or her own two eyes evidence of criminal activity, that at least is something the officer can support. Like with Craig's gun example. Maybe the person has a CPL, but they didn't tell me that they had a CPL, and here I see a gun sitting in the back seat. It's a pistol. It's a 9mm. What the F is that gun doing back there? That's fudge, F for fudge. What the fudge is that gun doing back there? Yeah.
All right, talk about hot pursuit.
Boy, hot pursuit is an interesting one. I have not dealt with hot pursuit in a long time.
I've never dealt with hot pursuit, so.
That's the kind of exception to the warrant requirement that, sometimes it ends up in a shooting like we had in the city of East Lansing in April 25th of 2022. We had a hot pursuit case that is still a hot topic amongst some people in East Lansing. And an officer who was my client shot a young man who was what we assert was a fleeing felony because he walked into a Meijer grocery store. It's a big, grocery discount store. And somebody called 911 because they saw this young man who was wearing one of those ski masks put a handgun in his waistband and then walk into the store. And so hot pursuit is you're chasing a person who you think did is or will commit a felony, and you can articulate why, you've got the right to chase that person, and then the evidence of the crime that you ultimately uncover can be used, even though you didn't have a search warrant, to search their person, search their vehicle, that sort of thing.
Yeah, this is just fantastic constitutional information, Craig, for all the listeners out there. And Mike Nichols, attorney at law, is talking about the exceptions to a search warrant.
Quick time out, though. We talked about how we love our veterans. We got to say, hey, what's up to our man Jay Green in Tawas, Michigan.
Greeny. He's a Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine, correct?
And Wendy Moran, yes. Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Appreciate all the armed forces, every branch, absolutely.
Wendy reminded me that I think it was Tuesday, Jay turned 50. Was it Monday? Yesterday? Okay, so Wednesday, September 20th, Jay Green, a former Marine, turned 50 years old. Sorry, Green, if you didn't want anybody.
He looks good. I thought he was more like 30. Craig, didn't you think Greeny was like 32?
35. I was thinking
30. Yeah, 32, 35. Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, Craig, you've got the clock there. How much more time we have left on this amazing segment about constitutional law?
A couple of minutes, and I wanted to throw something out that maybe kind of steers this conversation into a slightly different direction. But what if, Mike, you're sitting there and the police officer says, do you mind if I look in your vehicle? And you say, sure, no problem. That is a completely different situation than what we're talking about, correct?
Yeah, that's another exception to the warrant requirement. That's called consent. And that's the one that's easiest for the officer because you said yes. Yep. You don't object. Now, consent has to be what we call direct, unequivocal, express, and voluntary. So sometimes we argue about whether the person was coerced, but consent, man, that's an easy one for the officers.
So here's one for you, Mr. Mike Nichols, attorney at law, regarding consent, and I get this quite often because just as you do, I specialize in alcohol-related operating while intoxicated arrest. Intoxication, unfortunately, would you say is or is not a defense when the issue of consent comes up? Look, I was intoxicated. I could not understand the bounty of what was in front of me. How could I possibly consent when I wasn't in my right mind?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very fact intensive. It can be a factor, but I don't think, I mean, most of the cases say just because a person was drunk doesn't mean they couldn't give consent.
Right. I kind of, that bothers me where the courts come down on that issue.
That gets us into a whole
another show
that I know.
Right.
I know Craig wants to talk about it. He wants to talk about phone sex.
No, not at all. Not at all. But it does, unfortunately, consent is the hardest for you and Todd, correct, lawyers? Because
absolutely.
That means you're giving up a lot of your rights, and it's hard to defend that if something happens.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
If I've learned anything from you two, it's never give up your rights that easily.
You have the right to remain silent. Use it.
Exactly.
Mike, if you could just, we're running out of time in the segment, could you just briefly tell the listeners, when an officer approaches the vehicle, what are you required by law to provide?
License, registration, proof of insurance. If the officer tells you to step out of the vehicle, I would step out of the vehicle because it's not worth fighting about. It's really easy to justify asking a person to step from the vehicle. In fact, some would say that there's a Supreme Court case that says that, the officer can pretty much get the person out of the car just because the officer says, I think this person may have been a threat.
I was going to say that. And I learned that from you, actually, Mike. Everything I know, I learned from you. I mean, truth be told. So if I sound smart, folks, it's because Mike is one of my best friends. Let me just leave it at that. Mike, so thank you, Mr. Mike Nichols.
So kind.
I appreciate it. Because
so kind.
Let's be true. How often during the day you're in court doing whatever you do and I'm texting you about a legal issue and you're so kind, you literally will send me cases and briefs and footnotes on cases. I mean, it's just I'm so fortunate to have you as a close friend. I'm just saying,
but
it's
thank
like
God
having...
for Siri, right? Because we can text each other even if we're in the car with Apple Play or CarPlay, whatever that thing is, and I usually just try to come up from memory with a case. Sometimes I'm even right, but sometimes it just gets your research jump started.
Yeah, you have that memory. You could just cite off cases and cites and citations. It's unbelievable. But hey, Craig, I'm so honored to have attorney Mike Nichols and Wendy Nichols, attorney at law, in the background there with the dishes and the water on the show. This is our third show back from hiatus, Craig?
It is our third show back.
Yeah, and Mike will be on every month. You can hear Mr. Nichols on this show, and he'll also be on the YouTube version. We have a great episode with Mike and I, and the actual video, Mike, is you with your hand to your forehead because we were talking about reefer madness and where that started, which came from a movie in the 30s, which was called Reefer Madness, actually.
1936, was it?
37, okay.
37.
Yep. So that's where the term originated, I believe.
And that's hilarious because we were just past prohibition and everybody was like, alcohol is great, and nobody cared about drunk driving in the 30s. I mean, remember the woman who wrote Gone with the Wind was killed by a guy who was impaired by alcohol. She was
I did not know that.
Hit by yeah. Look it up. And it was like nobody cared. He got 2 years of probation, and it was done.
I did not know that.
Yes, we did not give a rat's behind about alcohol back in the 30s because we were just past prohibition. It was
everybody was ready to go.
Everybody was ready to go. We were so pent up. Yeah.
Speaking of being ready to go, we got to take a break. We'll come back.
Come on, Craig.
I know. We'll finish up the Todd at 11 Law.
Oh, wow.
Come back.
Welcome back to the Todd L. Levitt Law Show, turning it and burning it, coming back strong with the fix. Red Skies at Night in the mothership with attorney Mike Nichols, Craig Russell, the muscle, the hustle, and please.
We finally got some good music. The fix.
The fix. Hey, by the way, Mike, and we want all the listeners out there to go to our YouTube channel. It's just Todd L. Levitt Law Show, and subscribe. We're going to have tons of content coming up. You can see all of our mugs on there. And also, I want to congratulate my family, Grant and Amanda, the baptism of beautiful Graceland yesterday. At the same time with Anthony and Rosanna's beautiful daughter, my cousin Teresa, dual baptisms in Detroit. So congrats to the familia and those beautiful, beautiful daughters. So, yep. But anyhow, just want to get that out, Mike and Craig. Craig, you had a question in regarding what for Mr. Nichols and some sports issue?
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, Mr. Nichols, who's living in East Lansing and has a lot of Michigan State ties. What's going on with the Mel Tucker thing?
Well, the university has announced that it's intending to fire Mel. Alan Holler, the athletic director, wrote him a letter on Monday. I have a client who's involved in this whole mess, so I want to temper my comments with that. But, I guess the biggest disappointment is it seems like MSU just continues to have struggles with the adults in the room are supposed to act like adults. And the kids who are on the field and on the court always seem to suffer.
That's a fine way of putting it. That's a fine way. Not that this doesn't happen at other colleges all over the place. I mean, look, Harbaugh's got his problems. Some of the coaches who are, they give a recruit a cheeseburger and now they're getting in trouble. And and then there's the gambling thing. I mean,
some of these kids are amazing. Like, we have a clerk. He's number 35, Sam Edwards. That young man busts his hump probably 20-hour days, 5 to 6 days a week. And he's an incredible young man, and I just hate to see him go through what he's going through. And, of course, my client, Kyrie or KJ Crump, I mean, those guys work their butts off. They go to class. They get good grades. And then they have to, have this happen. And, man, it's just props to them for pushing through.
Yeah.
Go green, absolutely.
Go green.
Go green, go
I'm
white.
a graduate of, MSU Law School by default. I graduated from Detroit College of Law in 1992, which became MSU Law School, in 1995, Mike, I think it was?
Right about 95 is when the legislature held its nose and approved MSU merging with DCL.
I became an automatic alumnus of MSU, and I'm a huge Michigan fan, and I'm a Chip by degree. I went to Central, but hey, we've got to cut it short here. Not short. This is a long show. So once again, Attorney Mike Nichols, how do listeners get a hold of you at your office for representation? And Wendy Nichols, attorney.
First of all, I was remiss. The name of the author of Gone with the Wind, Margaret Mitchell, incredible writer.
Yep.
But you can reach out to me at www.
I don't give a darn, Mike. A little quote from Gone with the Wind.
Nice. Nicely done. Yes. You just need that mustache. www.nicholslawyers.com, 517-432-9000. Don't forget, if you see Jay Green, wish him a happy 50th birthday if you see him around Tawas.
Will do. Happy birthday, Jay.
There he is, Mike Nichols. And Todd, I hate to break the news to you. Show's over. We got to go.
Craig, let's all be the best versions of who we are. We're not here for a long time, folks. We're here for a good time. Take us out, Craig, with Chris Grandy's Mid-Michigan, Central Michigan homegrown group, Horizon Theory, and the song is called what, Craig?
December.
Check them out on YouTube.
The Todd L. Levitt Law Show, brought to you by Clark Modular Homes of Mount Pleasant, Rusty Gold Antiques in Everett, Chad Malley Well Drilling of Rosebush, Clear Vision Windows, Siding and Roofing of Midland, and attorney Todd L. Levitt.
Opinions expressed on this radio program do not necessarily reflect the views of this radio station.